Today I'm going to talk about the Gameboy printer, a device that lets you print out images from your Game Boy games. I'll show you how it works, what games support it, and how to hack it to print your own custom images. The Gameboy printer was released in 1998 and ceased production in 2003. It was a peripheral that connected to the Game Boy via link cable and allowed you to print out stickers of screenshots, game data, and other graphics from compatible games. There were only roughly 40 games that officially supported the Game Boy printer, which includes some of the most popular titles such as Pokemon Red, Blue, Green, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Pinball, and the trading card game, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX, Harvest Moon 2, the Game Boy camera, Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, and Mary-Kate and Ashley Pocket Planner. The device can connect to every version of the Game Boy, except the Game Boy Micro, using the Game Boy Color cable. Original Game Boys needed a special cable, as those use a different port than the Game Boy Color, and the Game Boy Advance was backwards compatible with the Game Boy Color despite using a different cable. The printer is a thermal receipt printer, the same ones that print out the 15-mile long CVS receipts, where a carbon paper is heated to print shades of black. Because of this, the Game Boy printer is only capable of 2-bit color, meaning it can only print 4 shades of black. It took a proprietary 38mm wide thermal paper that had adhesive backing so that it could be a sticker for your printouts. Now let's talk about how the printer actually prints an image. You might think that it's as simple as sending a bitmap file to the printer and letting it do its magic, but no, that would be too easy. The Game Boy printer has its own unique way of encoding and decoding images that is quite different from normal image formats. Normal image formats like bitmap go left to right the same way English readers read a page, storing 3 bytes for red, green, and blue, then moving to the right until it reaches the end of the row, and then going to the next row. The Game Boy printer works much like all the great Nintendo consoles of decades past, from the NES to the DS's 2D engine, by working in tiles to form an image. Tiles are 8x8 pixel squares that compose of a whole or part of an image. Mario in the original Mario game is composed of 4 tiles that are situated next to each other to create a whole character, while the power-up mushrooms are only 1 tile. Each pixel within a tile is read left to right, top to bottom. Those tiles are then read left to right, top to bottom themselves. This means reading and creating images isn't straightforward. To complicate things more, I previously stated that the Game Boy printer uses 2-bit color, meaning it only uses 2 of the 8 bits per byte to represent a pixel. But because of this, a single byte can store 4 pixels due to the low resolution and limited shades. Each 8x8 tile is made up of 64 pixels, and a tile can be represented in only 16 bytes. This becomes very useful considering the Game Boy printer can only store 640 bytes in memory before needing to print and clear the memory for the next block of data, allowing us to print 4 times the amount of data compared to using 1 byte per pixel. The Game Boy printer has a couple settings we can use to style the prints. These include the printing margins, where 1 byte is used to represent the margins on the left and right side. The first 4 bits are used for the left and the last 4 bits are used for the right. The other option is print head strength. This is typically used to adjust the average darkness. I know I said the printer is only capable of 2-bit color, but each row can have a different 7-bit print head strength with a value of 0 to 128. If you abuse this correctly, under perfect conditions, you might be able to produce a significantly more shades of gray, but with very little accuracy and a lot of horizontal banding. Other functions of the printer include initialize, which is used to clear the memory and settings, data, used to send the 640 bytes to the printer, print, used for what it sounds like, and finally inquiry, used to ask the printer for its status. The status comes back as a single byte, where every bit of that byte represents yes or no for a status. These statuses include checksum error, printer busy, image data full, unprocessed data, packet error, paper jam, other error, and battery too low. Speaking of checksum, if you don't know what a checksum is, it is a method of verifying that the data sent and the data received are the same. In modern systems, we use cryptographic hashes, but in the olden days, we would often just add the bytes together and make sure the sum total matched on both the Game Boy and the printer. They didn't need to be secure, because there was no risk of a virus or malicious interface with your Game Boy printer. That's about it for the Game Boy printer's inner functionality. Now let's see some examples of what it can do and how far we can push it. Here are some prints I made from various games that support it. As you can see, the quality is not very high, but it has its own charm. If you want to print your own custom images, well, that's where the hacking comes in. The Game Boy link cable uses a bastardized version of SPI, also known as Serial Peripheral Interface. SPI is a serial interface that consists of data in, data out, clock, and chip select pins. However, the Game Boy serial protocol does not use chip select, as only one device can be connected to a given Game Boy at a time. The clock is also allowed to go both ways, something that SPI does not support. But it is used in this protocol because, when you're trading Pokemon between Game Boys for example, neither device knows who's in control of the communication until the first one sends a message. In the case of the Game Boy printer, it is always the listening device and does not produce a clock signal and will not lead the communication. The protocol consists of packets, which are chunks of data sent from one device to another. Each packet has a header which tells what kind of packet it is, and the previously mentioned functions you want it to use. A payload which contains the actual data for each function, and a checksum, which is used to verify that no errors occurred during the transmission. We can create our own packets and send them to the printer using any microcontroller. In this example, I use a Pipe Pico. This way, we can trick the printer into thinking that we're sending valid data from a game, but instead we're sending our own custom images. Here's an example of what I was able to print using this method, and while that happens, I'll show the protocol in chronological order. As you can see, the results are much better than what you get from most games, and you have full control over what you want to print. I will leave a repository in the description if you want to try this yourself. Join me next time when I dissect the Pokemon trading protocol. I have so many cool projects I'm working on, I'm just so excited to show y'all, especially one I just ordered all obscure hardware from Japan for. If you'd like to see any of that, please subscribe. It makes a big difference in allowing me to continue doing this content, and I'd love to show you all the projects I have in the works. Okay, love you, bye.